All right, we can start with round two. Under the motion, this House hopes that U.S. loses the tariff war. Directly welcoming PM to start the speech.
Check, am I audible?
Yep, audible.
Okay, let me set my own timer. And while I'm setting my own timer, I will state my POI preference. Oh yeah, before that, I will state my own self. My pronouns is she or they, or whatever you want to call me is okay. Um, and then my POI preference. You can just unmute your own self. Because I don't think I will see the chat. So yeah. Oh yeah, but if I do not react anything to your POI statement, let's just assume that I reject your POI. Oh yeah, and kindly reminder, what I will going to say in this in my own speech doesn't really reflect my judgment and also my personal belief. So kindly take it with the grain of salt. Okay, I must start my speech in 3, 2, 1. I'm a fire male, and I'm a fire male. I'm a fire Trump. Okay, these motions, I as this House hopes that U.S. lose the tariff war, means we want to fight Trump's decision to make the tariff war. But before that, we have to take a look why actually this hope arise or emerging at the very first place. This hopes doesn't arise because he made such a causal destroying the world market, but it's more deeper than that, and it's more political interest in that there. And first, let's try to dive into the hope itself. Why people hope that U.S. Why this hope arise? U.S. did many pain to a whole people. For example, to the allies itself. U.S. did many pains to his allies. For example, like NATO, he's breaking NATO's allies by making the tariff war to the NATO itself, and then he's trying to steal Greenland from Denmark, and also he's trying to break the cooperation with the Canada by putting the tariff on iron without any cooperation at all, and this is disrupting to a lot of geopolitical power. And also he's also destroying the Ukraine by not giving the power or the help that he promised, and also and etc. And this is why people actually start to look US as the main villain in this kind of world. We want US to get punished by his own action, by his own political, and especially when he tried to win the political by just doing the tariff. But not only from the external itself, actually the hate also arise from the internal itself. Tariff war actually make Americans hard to or produce their own produce, because here's the thing. America do not resolve or do not have any resources, rich resources, not like many other countries. And because of that, they need the resources. And it means what? The producent needs a lot of minerals or many etc. For example, if you want to get your phone from America, you need microchips. Microchips do not solely happen in America. It needs Taiwan. It needs China. It needs everyone else to work on that. It means what? Uh, Maybe America get the benefits from the tariff war, but the producers of the telecommunication do not gain the benefits. And for example, for the manufacturer, for the one who use iron, people who use iron will suffer with a lot of economical disbenefits because America put tariff on the Canada, his uh, who is their best exporter iron, and this is why it's harmful for the economical benefits that will gain in American itself, and it raises the potential for the Americans to conflict with the inflations and etc. Because what America itself do not solely and principally not solely stand by their own. They need people. They are not China that can produce their own stuff. They need a lot of people. They are being produced from time to time by connecting to the countries. That's why the producers needs a lot of countries to make the productions, and that's what happened. And by doing the tariff war, it actually hurt the Americans from doing that, because they will have to pay a lot of taxes while they are being harder to get the minerals or get the resources they need to produce. Okay, and lastly, what we want to achieve is we want to punish the US by effectively weaken their political power. And how we do achieve that by hoping that the US loses the tariff war. Okay, actually, why we must hope in US loses the tariff war? Because here's the thing: US used the tariff war as a weapon to gain the political power and control over the world's market and also the geopolitical nations. And it's already happening because if you can see as a lot of market, for example, like IHSG and stuff, and other markets are turning red just because he point out the tariff. I think he's putting this way is weaken a lot of world market, because he is the main power of the countries to reallocate and also export their resources to America. And this also harms the cooperation between the countries. And for let's move on for the first one. First, it harms the WTO regulations, because first, America did this decision by himself without any cooperation of the others party. So and this tariff war is actually being made not because the calculation, but because his or Trump-based decision. For example, like if you are putting the China, he give the China 200% of tariff because China basically his feeling, for example. And this is what this is harming the WTO regulations, because this is not because due to the corporation's motive, but because the ego fulfilling or some self-care interest. And second, harm the overall world economic cooperation. Notice that countries needs other countries to make their economic stance. So because this disrupt all the economic system, it creates such a conflict between countries, and it will harm all the people. And that's why we proud to be government.
All right, thank you for that speech. Just a quick reminder for everyone that the speaking duration for Asian Parliamentary is strictly 7 minutes and 20 seconds. So please do be mindful with your speaking time, because anything beyond that won't be noted down. And with that, let's open up opposition's case by welcoming LO.
Am I audible?
Yep, audible.
I'll start my speech. I'll start my speech in 3, 2, 1. First thing first, let us engage with government first. First, they don't have a setup. The only thing that they want is to protect the U.S. itself. We doesn't understand which actors that they want to protect, because till now we heard from the first speaker from the PM that they want to protect the U.S. Itself. By them saying that America will get hate over this, this is too small achievement that they want to champion, right? This debate is not talking about are we going to regret this tariff or not? Are we going to regret countries to put tariff or not? This motion is to talk about and to see the futures. Are we going to hope that the US will lose or win? And they want US to lose the tariff war, because they want this to be given as the punishment for US itself. But response from this, even though what they're saying are going to happen in the future as a punishment, but is the US itself are going to see this as a punishment or as a challenging or something that's going to challenge the US? Do not forget, judges, US is the most powerful countries for centuries, not only in economically but military. If they get this, what are the US response eventually? That are the things that we want to preempt, and we want to mitigate, right? The characterizations under our world, I think both sides of the world, both sides of the house, we rationally know that economic is very, very circulating around US. Most of import export sector that require tariff. So I guess in our world characterizations, we are actually wanting to protect the vulnerable actor of labor and industries of the third world countries that will be impacted by this tariff set, right? In the status quo, in the interest of US is money, because their biggest selling money is like their biggest selling point, which is military is already weakened by other big countries like Russia and etc. So what they want now is economic involvement. That is money. And I guess US interest leads to US strategies to start lure wars to country with less economic power in order for them to insert the bargaining power of US. But let's talk about the mechanism of this tariff war first, and why this actually sort of good thing for to have US gotten into it. Mechanism of tariff war and how this happening. It is happening because US see the gap of exploit the economy of third world countries. So it starts, but the tariff mechanism start by US aiming to China, a big country, giving many diversion of issues from US to another thing like in Middle East war and oil exploitations, which is worse, as this is having a bigger impact and more non-mitigable thing. Imagine when US try to bombardier those Middle East countries, because they already they seen that they lose in the economic sector. They're going to do other things to gain their power, right? For countries that is more small in military, smaller than them, they will bombardier these countries, and we doesn't have those mitigable thing to counter them. That is why there is a capitalist thing, because they first we will think that war is expensive, and war doesn't have the trade-off, because we lose human being, we lose uh souls there. That is why we start, instead of wars by military, people right now starts by war in economically. But if the biggest country for centuries lose this war in economically, they will start another war. They will go back to old ages way back to start a war with military, that they want to gain their power. That is one thing that we do not want, and one thing that is really, really hard for us to mitigate, right? The third world countries economy, where industries and labor, their whole revenue coming from import export industry, especially labor who work in factory, whose revenue coming from this import export sector. Example like coding factory with China import export. The burden here, oppositions will prove that hoping the US loses the tariff war is problematic to general thing. Why shouldn't we hope us, US, to lose the tariff war? Because an argument first, if US lose tariff, they can start another big, more economical related war, right? Okay, here's the process analysis. US is already thirsty countries and capitalistic. They always want benefit, and they always seek for something more to get gain from third world countries. For example, in status quo, they already start tariff war to China. Now imagine if they lose the tariff war, under the side of government house, they'll see that the cost of goods back to normal and adaptable. But US in their side of the house will then start another war that can be worse, right? resources exploitations, and Middle East issues and Visa, MasterCard insertions to exploit Indonesian economy. But it is a distracted at least about 2 months postponed to the war that they plan to take about this tariff war. So we already explained to you two things: the war that they can do other in economically, and the war they can do worse in economic sector. These two things that could happen if they doesn't win or they lose the war, right? Second thing, we believe and hope this tariff war is actually a diversion of issues that US will focus on this one, while we also can mitigate from the tariff war, because it is easier for us to mitigate it rather than other issues that US can probably come up with, right? For example, like Indonesia awareness to not giving up curious, a gradual increase of the US is postponed due to taking care of the tariff war with China, right? And the third one, we believe that tariff actually support the local goods and commodities economy in America. Why this is such a valuable argument? Engage with their case to like protect the America itself. Let's engage with it, right? If the economy in America is good, more likely import goods will reduce their cost because their country is prosper enough after the tariff subside their other costs. When America import goods is prosper enough, trade relations is stronger as America will likely wanting to import goods more, and we can at least negotiate cheaper. If they win, this will lose this will be a loss for US because their private sector will have a lack of supplier chain for the economy. US has so many riches and exotic fruit or commodity coming from the third world countries that they have to adjust with the capability, or else where do can they get from? So likely in interest of US, winning the tariff won't really that bad because they will adjust to the society into third world countries, into the third world economy capability. Our goals that is we want US to win the tariff war because we don't want US to start even a bigger, not mitigable war. This protects the vulnerable actor, which is the third world countries and industries and labor. Uh, and that is are from me. We beg you to oppose.
All right, we thank you for that speech.
Opposition,
Opposition, you're not muted.
Kalau kamu layar pun udah nggak ada waktu.
Iya sih, nggak apa-apa.
Opposition, you're not muted.
Layar di kamu aja.
Go.
Okay, yours. Okay, thank you. So let's directly continue the case to government team. Let's welcome DPM.
Check, am I audible?
Yep, audible.
Okay, thank you. For POI preference, please do not unmute yourself. Just use the raise hand feature. If I do not respond, that means I do not take your POI, and you can unmute yourself after I said I'm taking your POI. Okay. Starting my speech. In three, 2, 1. All right, panels. I think the opposition side, they're trying to bring you some of the arguments, right? The first one, they said that if American lose this all tariff war, they said it will like cause into a bigger problem. For example, like they can use like a military war all of a sudden. Well, I don't think there is an logical explanation why that suddenly could happen. That the first one, right? And also like the characterization of my first speaker, it's I think it's already clear that US right now are being like opposed by almost every countries in the world. So losing the world, not making US like reckless and then making war decision, because like every country will fight back. Even his allies, for example, like NATO, it's already explained by my first speaker, and also like Canada, the US biggest ally. They're not even like they will like not helping US, and eventually like every countries they will like fight back, because like apparently right now US has like become every country, almost every country's um every country is like against them. even worse, like they want out from NATO, meaning that they doesn't have like a big military power anymore compared to all countries that become at once, I guess. So I think at this point there is no logical step why all of a sudden this can like lead into like traditional or like military war at the end of the day. And even if like at the end US started the war, I did like he started with lots of country. So I think it will be like possible that US might be lose anyway. And winning the tariff war doesn't mean that he will not start the war anyway. Like no one can guarantee that apparently, right? And then the second thing, they're also trying to bring you that the US tariffs are like necessary like to protect the domestic industries, right? So like they can negotiate better, so on and so forth. I don't we see that this is not true. We don't think so because we can see that US tariffs raise costs for customers and like harm their own manufacturers who rely on imported materials. Right. So, for example, like if the U.S. farmers suffered badly during the Trump's trade with war with China, like many industries let off workers and went bankrupt. So we don't really see how this domestic industries can even be more safe under their side of the house because of the protections leads into like short-term populism but not in long-term instability and and like for yeah for stability. And also they said that they claim the tariffs are like a valid strategies against unfair trade. We agree that the unfair trade is like exists, but the tariffs are like a blunt weapon. So when US imposes tariff like this, like unilaterally, and like undermines the global mechanism like the WTO, they are supposed to handle disputes anyway. So I think those two big main points coming from opposition is like likely to happen, and also no logical explanation why that could be happened at the end of the day. Okay, moving into my extension then. So we think that US lost rebalance soft power and also global leadership. My first speaker already talked to you that this tariff war, it's not only about like economic, but also there is like a geopolitical issue between that, right? So US often claim moral leadership in international cooperation, but in trade, in acts that in trade they are being so selfish. If the US suffers like backlash for its aggression, it forces like a shift towards fairer diplomacy, especially in region like for example like Asian or maybe African or even like American Latin, right? So the countries that see U.S. punish economically are more likely to diversify the alliance, leading a more multipolar and also like balanced global economy. And then the second point is like that is economic bullying beyond tariffs. So tariffs are just the start. The U.S. also uses a sanction, also like technologic bending and also like swift access as their power tools. If they're seen to lose their fight, they're less likely to repeat the pattern as well, which benefits a weaker economic constantly threatened by the economic coercions nowadays or that already exists. And also like I would say that this debate, we're not talking about cheering up the US to collapse. No, we're not talking about that. But it's about like changing the incentives. When the most powerful country loses in tariff war, it sets a global precedent. Threat aggression will backfire. Our sides believe in a stable and also more cooperative economy, not one driven by dominance and retaliations by US or by any other countries at the end of the day. So we'll emphasize what will happen after the US losses. If US lost that That means revises the legitimacy of the WTO and also the global trade rules. And also it will shift threats from zero sum reiteration to win-win negotiation at the end of the day. Makes the world is more saving for developing economic countries who otherwise get crushed in a great power competition. The symbolism of U.S. losing matters. It changes the how future threats conflict are handled globally. So, in a world where one superpower can impose pain with little consequence, no economic is truly safe. We hope that US loses this tariff war because only through that loss will we gain a fairer, more predictable, and less hostile global economic. Proud to continue this case of as a government. Thank you.
All right, we thank you for that speech. To continue on with opposition's case, let's welcome PLO.
Okay, am I audible?
Yep, audible.
Okay, let me set up my timer first. And then for preference wanted, I go by she her, and then for POI preference, just unmute. Okay, like that, maybe. Okay, so I will start my pitch in 3, 2, 1. Judges, I think in government side of the house, their whole argument is principality about US being bullied, and they don't even engage to our vulnerable actor. So let's hear about our practical benefit, not practical benefit, but practical things about why US shouldn't we hope to lose the tariff war anyway. This is the thing that my first speaker already bring. Imagine if US loses tariff war, they'll be so rushy to get another win upon the world because of their interest, right? My first speaker already mentioned to you about the interest of US is to exploit the benefit of country gap, is to exploit, to have the money, is to have the benefit. That's the interest of US that they will more likely to do. So in our likelihood analysis, if US lose the tariff war, they'll be so rushy to get another win upon the world, and then they will move to something bigger and not mitigable. For example, coming to Middle East issue, to oil exploitation, which is already kind of neglected due to them going to tariff war in China. What will happen? Which side has less beneficial impact than the government or the opposition talking about this one? Okay, if US is kind of afraid to do that because let's engage with opposition. Let's engage to what government has thrown to us about the logical explanation, and that US won't still do that. The first thing that you need to remember about the factuality is that US still attacked the Middle East during their economy recession in COVID. Now, there's a logical explanation. Even if they still lose the tariff war and they're kind of weak in economy, they still have the military power. They're still in the they're still in the United Nations. They're still by veto. They still have their military power to start that. Imagine if the COVID economy recession, they can start Middle East war anyway. So why couldn't they start another war after their tariff rules? That's the thing. I think for the rebuttals, I already explained about the logical explanation from them. The likelihood analysis is there because if they lose the tariff war, they will more likely to rush, to attack, to make some more bigger and non-mitigable issue that will likely to happen because they still have the military power despite being so in economic things. Okay, when they're talking about, okay, US is already so hated by this decision of tariff things, geopolitical issue. That just, you still need to remember, country is a country. War is still a things that benefit the country. Even if Canada is very having some beef with US, if US ask them to be an ally, oil exploitation by saying, I will give you 10%, Canada will more likely to do that. That's the thing. It's the logical and rational things that we need to do now, and that we need to know, because that's the thing that country more, the interest of country is to win something, to benefit something, and how that's coming from war. That's why the likelihood analysis about war going to happen, that war can be started by the US, is so likely to happen. Okay, the second rebuttal about their big point is about in domestic industry protection in America. In US. But the biggest vulnerable actor that I will say of tariff itself is industry and labor in third world country. Domestic industry from them is not necessarily needed to be safe, as US is still rational to protect them. Obviously, US still wants their economy still work locally, so they will still protect them. So that's why when we're talking about not hoping US to lose, and we are thinking about US postponing some things because of the tariff war to not getting into some sort of more non-mitigable and bigger issue, we're talking about the industry and labor from the third world country. Here's the picturization. Here's the imagination, jury. This is the thing. If you're an industry or labor in third world country, and suddenly US, after losing the tariff war, okay, you happy in the side of the height of house, you're happy. The goods cost more adaptable, and okay, that's fine. But the thing is, if US lose it, they start another war. There's more non-mitigable. The whole economy for industry and labor in third world country is entirely collapsed. I would say because war is something that will collapse your economy entirely, but at least the tariff war postponing US to actually getting into some more of exploitation in war, something like Middle East, something into inserting inserting visa things to Indonesia, which is already some sort of popular things, That's why Indonesia is kind of protecting our curious, right? That's the thing. If US lose the tariff war, they will push to that type of sector, and that will cause more imbalance in economy, I would say. And the three is, as aligned with my second rebuttal about economic balance and the development cannot be achieved if you as lose, if you really listen to what my first speaker already mechanized to you, and the likelihood analysis about what will happen if you as lose the tariff war, about how their interests really align with their strategy to start another war. This won't be achieved. This will be not happen in their side of the house. At least in our side of the house, there is some hope for this. There is some things that can we see from this, and there is some sort of duration for the mitigable things. To it. Okay, I would say about the impact comparison. In government side of the house, okay, the economy goes adaptable and goes back to normal, but it's not long term it's not long term, it's only short term, because in our likelihood analysis, US will start another non-mitigable war, and there is no mitigation coming from their side of the house. But in our side of the house, talking about impact, okay, economy is kind of look like fragile and scary, but at least in our side of the house, we make US has the some sort of hope to postpone the more non-mitigable war. And even in our side, for the worst case, this mechanism of postponing war actually still beneficial for a vulnerable actor, because we still have time to process the tariff war disadvantage that we can mitigate. For example, third world country can just stopping local community, which is very crucial for the US and for the local community supply chain. US will be threatened, and also we have this fear mongering from tariff war that we already anticipate on mitigate. For example, awareness about not giving up tourists and not letting visa America to enter. I guess that's why the benefit from us is very tangible here, not only some sort of principality. The extension of some sort of these benefits about supply chains in America is also that the developing country, imagine if us start to import from a developed country that is now their opponent, they were more likely to consider import from a developing country. This is the imagination. If the tariff war wins, the things within America and China is very high. America won't likely to get lithium from China, because why? The tariff war is so set high in China, 125%. Who wants to do that? So they will more likely goes to developing country, for example, like some country in third world country that can actually succeed the lithium. So it will more likely provide wealthness and prosperity to the third world country, right? Our vulnerable actor, the industry and labor that need to be supported, that need to be protected, is coming from here. So the link back is very clear from us that we want to protect the vulnerable actor, which is already protected by our mechanism from worst case to best case, and we already also align with motion that why losing the tariff for US shouldn't be hope anyway. So I think that's all. Thank you.
All right, thank you for that speech. And to continue on with Gov's case, let's welcome government.
Hi, am I audible?
Yep, audible.
Okay, let me just set up my timer. My pronouns is she or they. If your preference, just put on a chat. Just a second. Okay. Let me set up my papers. Starting my speech. in wait, just a second. Where is my paper? Okay, starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. Let's start the. Okay, I'm as the whip of the government team. We were going to talk. I'm going to talk about a couple things. First of all, I'm going to talk about clash. I'm going to talk about rebuttals. I'm going to talk why is it morally justified, and if I have more time, I will compare and summarize this debate. First of all, clashes. We have two clashes here that have been brought up by both sides of the house. First of all, U.S. power, and second of all, industries and labor, domestic industries and whatsoever. Okay, getting into the first class, U.S. wanting more power. We, on the side of the government, we basically wants to hope that this, by hoping U.S. loses tariffs war, we want a more sophisticated problem-solving situation. We don't want war, okay, ladies and gentlemen. We want something that could benefit us and benefit the whole country. And not only that, but we also want to make sure U.S. wouldn't start another war again. Here's why. Some of the clashes that have been brought up by the opposition side, they talk about how U.S. U.S. lose their economic sector, they're going to start bombing everyone, gonna start war and military war. So they opt to choose that it's better to have an economic war rather than a military war, right? But then this is a problem in our side of the house. We framed that what we want on our side of the house is that we want to punish U.S. by hoping the U.S. loses the tariffs war. They would not do it again. So this is a line which we want to show to you that practically, if we hope that U.S. loses war, we want to make sure that no other war will happen. Because by the end of the day, if U.S. loses tariffs war, it means they don't have any resources, they don't have any other economic value to start a military war by the end of the day. Even if they start a military war with someone, it wouldn't going to happen because other countries like NATO and so on and so on, they would protect themselves from U.S. and U.S. will gonna fall down by the end of the day. So at the end of the day, even if the tariffs they actually win this tariffs war, it's going to start another sanctions or so on and so on. More banning or even like more tariffs war towards other third world countries. So if they're talking about how vulnerable actors third world countries are or about other countries, by starting this third world itself, it's already harmful to these vulnerable actors. Now, second clash is that they talk about our industries and labor, right? When we say that we want to punish the U.S. by hoping this, that we know the harm that's happening in our side of the house on their side of the house is that they want to have a long-term impact towards their own benefits of their own country, but this means of the benefits of U.S. have itself, right? Now, by the end of the day, even if this industries and labor going to fall down whatsoever on their side of the house, they think they can fix it. But no, ladies and gentlemen, we don't want another terrorist war to happen. What we want is to protect our own economic values or economic we don't want harm to other economic cooperation whatsoever. The WTO regulations or U.S. did this decision without considering other parties will all actually means that U.S. is opposed by all countries. So why would domestic industries making are not safe? No, thank you. And then getting into my rebuttals. Okay, first of all, winning the terrorist war doesn't mean they said that winning the terrorist war doesn't mean that he will not start another war. He already started war with Middle East before terrorist war. He already engaged with Israel before terrorist war. We Hence, like we think win or losing tariffs, we start a war anyway. Hence, we want to stop this tariff war to happen, ladies and gentlemen. Second rebuttal is that they said that even if America wants to start war, America will retaliate because first of all, tariffs makes people suffer, and starting war makes it worse. No, the status quo is that U.S. already have inflation. They started starting war will make inflation far worse, ladies and gentlemen. That which means that U.S. will retaliate. Now, in comparison to our
You're right.
world, war is not going to start because first of all, it opens the economic bargaining far more powerful, ladies and gentlemen. So America can get more money from their country prosperity, and then people will also get money. Means that they became more happier. People don't want their economic crumbles just so to see that U.S. Will not want war if they stable anyway. But war will start because the economic is unstable. Hence, if by the end of the day tariffs is already exist, we not their side not only going to start another war, but they're going to practically achieve another tariff war that's going to happen anyway, and more military war will happen because by the end of the day, U.S. are not the only country that have nuclear bomb whatsoever. Because if we're talking about military war, we're talking about other countries who have a very much good military sanctions whatsoever, and hence I propose. Thank you.
All right, we thank you for that speech. Now to continue on with opposition's case, let's welcome opposition one.
Boleh timer? Okay. I will start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Okay, clarifications. We don't want US to we don't hope the US to we hope US win the trade war because we don't want the US to start bigger and non-mitigable war. If they talk about the moral justifications, it's immoral in government side because being biased to an actor to lose is immoral in the first place. And because every countries have citizen and state to be protected, if they said there is NATO is already in US side anyway because US already have the veto rights anyway. So anything that they say about there's WTO, NATO, and etc. It doesn't matter because at the end of the day, US has their veto rights. And independent rebuttal, they said that winning the tariff will not stop the US will not stop US to start the war. And we said that when the US won this tariff, at least the focus to war is lessened. That much bigger harm will lessen too. Because like my first speaker and the second speaker already talked about, US has many places and intention to insert their power, like the resources exploitations and Middle East issue and the Visa Mastercard and also the insertion to exploit the national economy. But it is at least very distracted. About 2 months postponed to what they planned. And to take about this tariff war. And I still don't get it why the rebuttals coming from government second speaker about why we lacking of our logical explanations, but they just point out one point and said that there are no logical explanations. But I think it's already clear and in our side. And they said about this motion is about to changing the incentive. But thing with what they the same with what they said about us lacking of logical explanation when they don't really have they don't really have and care about their vulnerable actor. They are the ones who are trying to champion in their case. They just say about the basic principality from the US. But let's be charitable. If US want to change their incentive, if they lose, it is harmful in government side because their incentive now is based on how to fulfill their ego and reputation again after this loss. And
the government side inside of the house also said that if US lose the tariff war, they will not repeat the pattern. This is not true. US has many historical losses and mismanagement, like the war in Vietnam and war in Afghanistan. They lose like trillion of dollar, and yet they still do it. They still funding the war. They still do the war, and the reason is because just simply they are more powerful. They are more powerful, and they have the intention just to gain more power. And even if they lose the war, they have the chance to start another tariff war again because they just want to, and because they have the power, right? And if they loses, they said if they loses, there will not be any hegemony or tyranny of power. And first of all, judges, they don't have any profit analysis nor a basis in this one because losing tariff war does not equally the US will losing power. They're still the first world country. They have four powerful allies. The US already monopolized in many sectors like money, like every country using Visa and MasterCard. They hoard the value of the money, like the currency, the dollar currency, and they still try to insert their power to ASEAN independent transaction sector, like the curious, like what my first speaker and second speaker already stated. And we don't say that it is okay to US to start another war. What will happen that will happen in the future? But what we mean is it is better to make US kind of distracted from the other things rather than lose from this war and start another war and etc. And they say they don't want the other wars to happen. This is exactly why our case running in their case. My first and second speaker already talked about it again and again and again, and they said it's not engaging enough. And about that we don't hope the US to lose because they will still focus in this tariff war and forget about the other war that will most likely to happen in the future. And let's move to clash. And if they win, this will be a losses for US because this private sector will have lack of supplier chain for their economy. Okay, and US has so many riches and exotic fruit like commodity coming from the third world country, and they have to adjust with the capability or where else they can to get it. And so likely in the interest of US, winning the tariff won't really that bad because they will adjust society in the third world economic capability. And why is it likely? Because they need it. They need raw materials, then commodities for the production, just like what government said to you. In this class, we also champion to the input for the developing countries' economy because US will do more outsourcing for electronic component because they're now in war with China. Or let's engage with mineral cases that government try to bring. They will do more outsourcing for other mineral sources because they're now in war with Canada that used to be their mineral supplier. Means that there are more possibilities for developing countries to enter the market of US. This is possible to happen compared to their impact about punishment for US if they lose the tariff war. And global win-win negotiations. We already explained to you that even if they lose, nothing really harms US because the bargaining power is already there. Something that gets even worse is first US will possibly start a new war in other sectors, and the second, they will reduce their incentive that can impact another developing countries. For example, they might no, they might stop investing to developing countries, and they might reduce their productions because now they need to establish their capital first. And other non-mitigable risks for other countries. We already explained to you, even if in our worst case scenario, there will be also high tariff for developing countries. At the very least, first we can still do negotiations. There is also like WTO and see there are also another big countries to be partnered with, and for there are incentive for local economy establishment for third world country. If importing commodities is that expensive, that's why we win in the vulnerable actor and we protect the third world country and even the US industry itself. Let's move to reply why the government cannot win this debate. Also, the opposition, the government fails to consider about our escalation risk. Why if the US loses the tariff war, they do not account about how the US will uh, do more aggressive economic strategies or even something that are not mitigable anyway. And also they never even touch about the actor that's supposed to be protected. And first, they said that even the tariff have happened, uh, the war suddenly doesn't happen. And their statement is I will repeat
question, because if you guys hear it, we can explain to you why this happened in the first place. The US is trying to gain its money and its power, and if the tariffs, they would do anything to get the things that they want in much more non-mitigable way. Even though winning a tariff war can make US steal the war, and we are talking about the postponing war and diversion and the issue to make it more mitigable, they don't talk about it since. To propose. Thank you.
All right, thank you for this speech. Now to close opposition's entire case, let's welcome opposition reply. For opposition reply.
Sorry, am I audible?
Yes, you're audible.
I'll start my speech. And 3, 2, 1. Let's see why the government side of the house can win in this debate. The opposite, they fails to consider that the escalations of risk of the US losing the tariff war. They do not count for how a loss could embolden the US to pursue even more aggressive economic strategies, which would be catastrophic for countries' economies. Failure to recognize the long-term impact, where they do not acknowledge the long-term consequences of a tariff loss. They focus on a short-term trade advantage without factoring in the largest geopolitical and economic shifts that would destabilize vulnerable countries in the future, right? They never engage with our burden that US can start another war that is more large and non-mitigable. My previous speaker already give you the process analysis that and the example, right? Just because the government is saying, oh, just because they're saying like it is not logical without any further layer, we still stand for it, right? And let's see, the government in the first place already failed to give us a path in this debate, right? They never give us a setup what this tariff looks like and the characterization that in this debate. But here opposition came to bring things that lead this debate. We explain to you that is what is happening in status quo, right? We explain the urgency in status quo. The interest of US, that is money as their bigger selling point. We give you the tariff mechanism, how it starts by US aiming to China, right? They never explain to you how can their vulnerable actor be protected compared to us. We give you process analysis, how can we protect our third world countries economy, industry and labor. We see that both sides does not want this war again, right? Exactly, but we see that this is a non-utopia world. It is not going to happen by just punish us. We don't see that by them not winning this it will become a punishment for them. We see that it is by not winning this US, it's not going to stop. It is the thing that will engage them to start even a war, bigger, huge war, even though they're under condition economically not going to do so. But eventually, what keep been doing, the example my speakers are giving to you, the US can still do it. The US engaged to do it. They will do it. They will do start war that things that are non-mitigable in the future, right? We keep telling you that with example. Our worst case is their best case anyway, because our worst case is when countries they do not have our worst case countries they did have huge tariff by US loss in this by US winning this war. But at the very least, if you compare it to their side of the house, when indeed US lose this war, compared to them, country does not even stand. It is hard for them to stand, and it is hard for them to even survive under the circumstances of US. There's such a thing that could, like we said, could bomb Middle East, could exploit the oil in Middle East, or in third world countries that is more likely not powerful as US, right? The things that US could do unto such those huge unmitigable things could happen. That is why we do not hope for US to eventually lost in this tariff war. We want US to win, so at least for them not highlighting other things that they can do, that they can pursue. These are the stances that we give in this debate. That is why we are winning because we give you a better benefit, eventually the bigger benefit than the government side of the house, and we give you how to achieve those benefits that will happen under our side of the house, and that is why we beg you to oppose.
All right, thank you for that speech. Let's continue on with government reply.
Hello. Am I audible?
Yep, audible.
Okay, thank you for the confirmation. I'm gonna set my timer first. I'm sorry. Okay, I'm going to start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Judges, please mention that our team already mechanized to you why people hope that Americans will lose this tariff war. And first of all, the prerequisite of the opposition team that they want to change the incentive to not engage in another war. The prerequisite of this their argument is whether the U.S. will start another war if they win the tariff war. I think we already proved to you if they want first, we already proved to you in my second and third speaker that even if the U.S. want to start the war, they already got the U.S. do not have any allies anymore. NATO, America already left the NATO. Even if he doesn't left, he already hurt many allies in NATO. For example, like Canada too. A lot of allies already been hurt, such as like Canada that Trump wants to Canada become the 51st member of America. That's already hurt their allies. So, and furthermore, the tariff puts many economic catastrophic in many countries that he will engage the war will start a war anyway, and it means what? It is the U.S. versus the world. I think we already proved to you that Trump will not make the reckless decision like that. So we still think that if he lose the tariff war, he wouldn't start the war. And even worse, if he want to start the war, he doesn't because he lose, he doesn't have the economic bargain at the very first place. Because what? We already proved to you that the internal inflation is already happening. Meaning what? He doesn't have the economic to start another war because he already lose the tariff war. And that is why we think that even when he lose, he doesn't will start the war. But let's engage to the comparison, right? In your side of the house, what happened in your house? Even if he win the tariff war, the war will happen in your side of the house because and it will become more worse. Why? Because you have a lot of economical bargain because you win the tariff war. So he already engaged with the war in Ukraine and also Russia. He already engaged with the Israel before the tariff war. We think that with or without tariff war, he will start the war anyway. But it will become more worse in your side of the house because you have the economical bargain that is too strong. In our side of the house, we remove that power. We remove the power that US have by removing their political stance, and we are pushing the urgency of US to not do the reckless action. And this is only happen if this kind of tariff war is not going to be the winning in Trump's sides. And also, I think that the prerequisite of the opposition sides only happen if if the US do not have stable economics or they want to gain the economic bargains inside of us. And here's the thing: war will not start if you already stable in economic. And by engaging in the more in war, you are engaging in more harmful way to your internal economics. That's why I don't think the war will be start because Trump do not want his economic in his country to be crumble. And also, if he want it, people will retaliate because in status quo, we already face inflation, and if you start doing the war, it will become the inflation much worse, as what the first speaker said. That's all. Thank you.
All right, that marks the end of the debate for round two of the second edition for the IWGM. Thank you, everyone. Since this is not a silent round, so there will be oral education. So please wait around 10 to 15 minutes while I deliberate and make my decision. Again, thank you, everyone. And yes, we'll be back for the oral education very soon.